I yanked both these wardrobe doors open. So I grabbed the handles and I pulled the doors open. And as I did, it was just silence. There was a unearthly silence in the room. And then I heard a cough, and I mean a big guttural cough in my ear, just there, like somebody was coughing in my ear, right in my face. And I was so scared.
There are tales of rogues and whores, of stratagems and wars. There's a tale for every season of the year. There are tales of knights and queens, of drudgery and dreams. There's a tale for everybody here. There are stories galore, in volumes by the score, on every subject throughout history. It's all waiting in Pandora's library.
Welcome to January's episode of Pandora's Library, a monthly podcast about books that feature the mysterious, fantastical, dark, and creepy elements of life. It's available as an audio podcast, but also as a visual podcast on Spotify and YouTube. My name is Karen Hamilton-Vile. I'm a paranormal murder mystery author of a series of books about Ada Baker, a medium who solves murders with the aid of the ghost she lives with. And this month, I'm interviewing paranormal author Liam Grave about his two books, The Lady in the Bay Window and The Lady in the Bay Window 2, a true story from a haunted Sheffield home. Welcome to the show, Liam.
Thanks for having me, Karen. It's great to be here.
And I suppose I'm speaking to you live from your haunted home, so I guess hello
You
to the
are.
spirits as well if they're listening.
You certainly are. So, yeah, if anything goes on in the background here, then please do let me know.
So I read the first book a year ago. I can't remember how I came across it, but it was great. And then I finished the second book this week. Both brilliant, highly recommended.
Thank you.
Can you give us a short explanation of what your two books are about?
Yeah, of course I can. So I've now lived in this home, which is infamously now known as number 333. It's not number 333, but I've changed all the names and addresses in the book because I didn't want it to become a circus. Basically, it's about me living in my haunted home for nigh on 21 years coming up this December. I was a fully fledged skeptic when I moved in here as a 19-year-old. And things have sort of turned my head since those days, 21 years ago, when I've seen things, heard things in the house that just aren't logically possible. And there's been now 7 sightings by 6 different people of the same old lady. These are all people that I know, but don't know each other. And hearing the eerie descriptions, which are very, very similar descriptions throughout the years of this old lady that's been seen in the house, is quite creepy, to say the least.
And who or what do you feel is haunting your home?
So we've got for the latest book, which obviously you've just read, The Lady in the Bay Window 2. There's a lady came forward who'd read the first book called Joanne. Who was a lovely local historian, and she's gone through all the National Archives, the local archives, and dug out photos and full history of the house. We believe now it's a lady called Mrs. Nielsen. Now, she's got quite a dark history, to say the least, but her daughter and husband and son lived here. We know that her daughter's husband actually passed away in this house. I've seen images of him. He's quite a strapping bloke is probably the best way to put it. I'm tall. I'm 6'4", and he looks a damn sight taller than me and quite sort of lurch-like in his shoulders. He's quite a big chap, but a very creepy, haunting photo from the archives, which unfortunately I can't share the images because they are from the National Archives, so it's not something I can share out on social media. But yeah, we think it might be Mrs. Nielsen or potentially Mrs. Tompkins, her daughter, who lived here for many years before her.
Oh, because the other thing made you think was because you had some strange growls as well, didn't you? Your wife hear some growls or something?
We did, yeah. We had. So the strange thing is, I mean, the whole books, both of the books, the first one being 18 years of me living in this haunted home, the latest book, which was released last Friday on Amazon, is about the past 2 years basically in the house. But it also sort of relays a couple of stories that weren't told in the first book, that sort of held back to tell in the second tale. They're all true stories. They're all real stories. One of which is about what we call the week of madness. So these things, living in a home like this, it doesn't happen all the time. There's no sort of regularity to it. It might be a month or two. We'll have a really calm house. It's a nice home. I've been here 21 years. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't a nice home. But then we'll have something that we call a week of madness, where you might start hearing footsteps around the house, or you'll see the odd door handle move when nobody's there to put any pressure on it, sort of spring-loaded door handles, which is quite creepy. But these things tend to escalate throughout that week, and then you get a sort of crescendo at the end with something happening. That what you're talking about with the growls was one of those weeks, and that was sort of midweek as well. That was during the week. My wife woke me up at about 7 o'clock in the morning and said, "There's something growling at the end of the bed." Now,
Oh, freaky.
now we have two dogs, two really manly dogs. We've got a Cavapoo and a Pomapoo, who are lovely dogs, and they sleep downstairs. They've got their own quarters downstairs, little cozy corner that they sleep in, which is far, far away from where we are up in the bedroom. Not that it's a huge house, it's a 3-bed semi-detached, but they are in the far end of the house downstairs. And they tend to be quite quiet as well. But this particular morning, my wife sort of woke me up and put her head into my chest and said, "There's something growling at the end of the bed. I need you to go and have a look." I sort of went to have a look over the edge of the bed, and there was nothing there. There was just a neat pile of clothes sat in the corner waiting to be put away. And I sort of crawled back into bed and looked at her and said, "What did it sound like? What was it? What was the noise?" And she said, "It wasn't just one noise. There were 3 growls that sort of got deeper and sort of more feral as it went along. It sounded like a wolf. It sounded
Wow.
like a very sort of, not like a domestic pet. It sounded a real sort of loud growl. We've never had that before. It was just that week that happened. But yeah, very strange occurrence.
And what inspired you to record your paranormal experiences in a book? A lot of people have experiences, but what was the inspiration to write it all down?
Yeah, sure. So basically, my mom, bless her, she had a very rare form of breast cancer, and we lost her back in May 23. But she'd been fighting this breast cancer for 5 years, and for the first 2 years of her treatment and from her diagnosis, I'd been doing sponsored dog walks. So the 2 pooches that I was just telling you about, we went on a lot of miles through a few months and raised a lot of money for Cancer Research UK, just under £3,000. And I slipped and damaged my knee. So my long dog walking days were over. And a good friend of mine came round to the house when I was in recovery, laid up on the sofa, waiting for surgery, and said, "Has anything paranormal happened?" So he used to live here. He actually used to rent this room that I'm in now, which is now my office, or my stepson's bedroom when he's back from university. But he came in, he sat down with me, and he was actually looking after me for the day while my wife was at work, because I couldn't do a great deal on one leg. And he'd made me some dinner, and he said, "Come on then, tell me what's happened that's been paranormal lately." And I started to tell him a story about some American coins that kept appearing in the house. And this happened over a 3-day period. We just kept finding this American 1-cent coin and then put it away somewhere safe, and it kept reappearing. And the story got stranger and stranger. And you will have read this in the first book, because it was in that first book. As I'm telling him the story, he was going sort of a very, very faint shade of white as I was telling him the story. So middle of the day, it wasn't a sort of eerie place to be, but he looked very scared and very sheepish. And when I got to the end of the story, I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "I am, but when did all this happen? When did it happen with the coins?" And I said, "Oh, it was last week when you were around fitting some lights on the drive on the front for me." And he said, "Okay, I was here then doing the fitting, and that night I went home and my wife went to put my trousers in the wash, and she found one thing in all the pockets, and it was an American 1-cent piece." And from that, there was another friend sat with me that day who looked at me and said, "You should write about things like this, because people love to hear about it. I love hearing these stories. They're great." And I literally, it was a light bulb moment. I just thought, you know what? As soon as they leave today, I'm going to sit there on the notes on my phone and write. And I started then, and it took me 3 years to self-publish the first book. It's just taken me another 2 to get the second one out there. But they've both done really well. Really, really well.
So how did you set about collating and structuring sort of the first book, a couple of decades of experience into a book?
Yeah. So I laid on the sofa that day. So after the two lads had left my house that day, I was laid on the sofa. I couldn't do a great deal. As I say, I was waiting for surgery on my leg and had to rest up. So I got my iPhone out of my pocket and I went on the notes on my phone and I started just bullet pointing all the things I could remember, all the sightings, all the major things that happened. I couldn't just write about, I mean, we hear footsteps in the house often, but it would be a very boring book if it was just footsteps, footsteps, footsteps. So I didn't want to write about the same thing over and over again. So I just looked at the major incidents that had happened, the paranormal incidents that had happened over the past 18 years. Once I'd bullet pointed all these down, I realised I had 25 really well worth telling stories, basically, of what happened in the house. And then I started just putting some meat on the bones by interviewing the people who were involved. Now, obviously, you've read the first book. There's probably only 3 or 4 stories that are actually aimed at me by anything paranormal, I think, probably in there. The rest are family and friends that have visited my home over the years. And there's been a lot, because through my 20s, I was a single chap, and I used to rent out the 2 spare rooms to friends or family throughout those years. So I don't know if you'd call it interviewing if it's with a friend, but chatting to them to find out what their experiences were like, how it made them feel. And I think through doing that, it was amazing to hear actually the fear in somebody's voice when they're telling you something that happened in the house. And a lot of these instances, I was there. I was actually witness when they were there, but didn't see the old lady, for instance. I've been there on three occasions when the ladies appeared in front of somebody and they've sort of been very shocked by it, as you would be, and I've not seen it. But yeah, I managed to get all the stories down. I actually started handing it round to friends and family just to say, look, I've never written before. Could you please have a read at this? I'd like to publish it and raise money for a cancer charity that's looking after my mum called Cavendish Cancer Care. And I said, every penny I want to go to them. But I need to make sure it's good enough to raise some money. So please read it. Make sure you're happy with it. And as I passed it around people, I was getting some fantastic feedback saying, we absolutely love it. It's incredible reading about the stories of what's happened in the house, the unknown, the unexplainable. But we want more. To which I said, okay, well, these are all true stories. I'm not going to make anything up to put in the book, but what do you mean by more? So they asked me to get a medium in the house, a spiritualist medium, and a paranormal team. So I did. I found a local spiritualist church, and I got the head medium there to come round to the house, a chap called Tim Doyle. And I didn't tell him my name. I told him my name was Mr. G. That was it. And said, I'm not going to give you any details because I'm quite a skeptic. I am still a very logical person. And I didn't want to give anything away. If he was going to find something out, and if he was a true medium, he was going to come in and tell me things that he should know about the house or about me. I didn't want to give that away in the first place, which worked really well, to be fair, because he shocked me within the first 5 minutes he was here. He was telling me things that he really shouldn't have known, a lot of which I couldn't put in the books. It was too personal to put in there. But he certainly made me more on the believer side of the fence with it. So the last 2 chapters are basically him and then a night stop by a paranormal investigation team called Awakening the Paranormal. And that's where I sort of wrapped up the first book.
Do you have a feeling why? Because it's mostly other people that have seen her, isn't it, rather than yourself? Is that right?
It is, yeah.
So why might that be?
I genuinely do not know. There's been six people, 7 sightings. One of which has come forward for the second book, who is a chap who used to live across the road. Somebody I've never met before in my life, but somehow the first book fell into his hands when it had been out a few months. And he contacted me via the Facebook page and said, I need to speak with you. I thought this was a non-event, but I saw the lady in the bay window after she'd passed. And he'd lived in the house across the road since 1967. He grew up on this street. He doesn't live here anymore, but his mom lived there until 2020 when she passed. So it was really strange. And again, I invited him round to the house to interview him for book 2. So he was one of the 6 people who's seen this lady in the bay window. She's not always spotted there. 3 of the sightings are in the bay window. The other 4 aren't. So they are in various places in the garden, in the house. So yeah, it's very strange. But I don't know why it's not me. In the answer to that, long answer.
And what was your first experience of the ghost? Can you remember what the
I can't
first
remember
ever was?
exactly what my first experience, but I can tell you what my first real head-turning experience was for me to think, actually, there's something going on here that's beyond anybody's understanding. And that was sitting on the sofa with my wife and seeing a spring-loaded door handle literally come down in front of both of our eyes. I watched the door handle come down. The door opened about 7 or 8 inches, enough for me to be able to tilt my head and have a look through to the bottom of the hallway at the bottom of the stairs and say, hello? And as I did, the handle popped back up and the door slammed shut violently. Now, as a logical person, there's nobody there to exert any pressure on that. Wind can cause doors to open. I get that. There was no windows open anyway. It was a dark night. There were no windows open. We've got new windows in the house. There's not a lot of draft in here. But the fact that the handle came down, I had to really... So, I mean, I ran across the room and opened the door and looked upstairs and sort of thought, what the hell is that? How has that just happened? And as I turned around to my wife, before anything, I just said, before I say anything to you as to what's just happened, just tell me what you've just seen, because I need to get my head around this. And she told me exactly the same thing. She said she saw the handle come down. I said, hello. The handle snaps up. The door slams shut. That, for me, was a real game changer, because that was the first time I'd seen, I suppose, poltergeist activity in the flesh. There's a lot of things that have happened where I've turned up after hearing a noise and seen something there, like a coin being thrown at me in the shower when there's nobody else in the room, and that was the American coins as well. But yeah, to see that handle was a big game changer for me.
I know that feeling. Like, say, when I moved out of home, it was into what I call haunted home, and one of the things it did was I had a long sleeve T-shirt hanging on the back of the door, and the arms just went up like that in the air, lifted up, and I ran over and yanked it off and stomped on it, and then left the house.
Wow.
But
Okay.
it's you just can't believe your eyes, can you? And
No.
it's
No.
terrible,
And
really.
these things
So-
still happen as well. So it's still happening now. It's crazy.
We had lots of footsteps as well. It started with footsteps. Did yours start with footsteps?
I would say probably the first thing I remember is footsteps around the house. And then we had banging in the house, which was strange, like somebody thudding on the floor upstairs, on like they were thudding a fist onto sort of floorboards. Really strange. And it's all carpeted upstairs as well, so if somebody was hit, it wouldn't make that sort of noise. But yeah, it's a very strange one.
What was the most terrifying experience you've had in the house?
There's been a few. I'm not going to lie. A lot of the things aren't terrifying. The more mischievous things that happen just to get your attention, sort of thing. But there have been a few that have really freaked me. There's 2 that really spring to mind. One of which was hearing a voice on the staircase. And this was different because I thought it was an intruder. I thought somebody had broken into the house. I was laid in bed. I had mum and dad's dog that particular night. I was looking after their dog called Guinness, a lovely border collie. And she was sat on the top step. She was used to guard the top step sort of with her chin on her paws. And as I laid down in bed, I could hear her tail wagging. Now, normally I would close my bedroom door because we do hear footsteps often. And it very often starts about 1 o'clock in the morning. It's really strange. Which the medium picked up on when he came to the house as well. He said, you hear footsteps at around 1 o'clock in the morning. I was like, yes, we do. So I normally close the bedroom door because you don't want to hear that while you're sleeping. You definitely don't want it to wake you up.
No.
It's quite creepy. So this particular night, for some reason, I hadn't closed the door. So I'm laid in bed and I start to hear this noise, like a shuffling noise. And it was quite a creepy noise to be hearing. I was living on my own at the time. And I realised what it was. It was Guinness's tail wagging at the top of the stairs. So I'm just about to open my mouth to say, do you want to come and get in bed? rather than be out there sort of freaking me out a little, wagging your tail at the top of the stairs. Because she'd only ever do that. She never used to move at the top of the stairs. She'd only ever do that if somebody was saying, "Do you want a treat?" or trying to sort of get her to come near. But as I opened my mouth to speak, I heard a man's voice say, "Come here," like really, like a whispered but forceful whisper. And that I just froze. I think anybody would do the same thing as that, because to me it was an intruder in my home. And we live in a nice neighbourhood. As I say, I've been here a long time now. But that day I thought somebody had broken into the house. So eventually when I came out of the whole thing of being frozen with my arms by my side, laid in bed thinking, "Oh my word, who is that in my house?" I then jumped out of bed and ran around the bedroom trying to find some form of weapon, which ridiculously I managed to pull the rail out of my wardrobe with all the clothes on it, which created quite a mess, and went to the top of the stairs to look over the banister. At this point, the dog's still looking down the stairs. Guinness is still staring at something at the bottom of the stairs, and it's dark down there. And I had to step over her and go down. Now, whatever was in the house that day, she would follow you anywhere in the house. And she used to lay there at night to guard the stairs. She always used to do it in any house, my mum and dad's house, my brother's house, and here. She used to guard the stairs at night. She would follow you anywhere. And that particular night, when I went round the house with this hollow metal pole out of the wardrobe, raised high above my head, she didn't follow me downstairs. It was like whatever was in the house, she didn't want to know anything about it. She wanted to stay up there. That was creepy. A more recent one, and this one really did freak me out. I woke up in the morning at 7 o'clock, the day before the growls that we were talking about before. Same time in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, pretty much to the minute, I was awoken by a child's xylophone is the best way to describe it, like a creepy melody on a xylophone. Now, we don't own a xylophone or a music box that plays music like that, but it was coming from somewhere in the bedroom, and I checked my phones. I've got a work phone and my personal phone. I checked those. It wasn't coming from there. I thought I might have left a podcast on or something. It wasn't. I walked round the bed, and I checked my wife's phone. She was still asleep. And my son, who's now 2.5, this was probably about a year ago. He was, longer than that, actually, probably a year and a half, because he was still sleeping in our room at the cot at the side of the bed. I went round and checked her phone, and there's nobody on that phone either. But I realised that the sound was actually coming from my side of the bed, where we've got a fitted wardrobe. And when I got to the wardrobe, I put my ear to the door, and I could hear this melody coming from the wardrobe. Now, that was creepy in itself, because it was kind of like the sort of music you hear just before a jump scare in a horror film. I don't get to watch many horror films because my wife won't watch them in the house. And to be fair, I don't like watching them in the house on my own. I don't like watching them in the house. I'd watch them with her, but she won't watch them in this house. But I yanked both these wardrobe doors open. So I grabbed the handles and I pulled the doors open. And as I did, it was just silence. There was a unearthly silence in the room. And then I heard a cough. And I mean a big guttural cough in my ear. Just there, like somebody was coughing in my ear, right in my face. And I was so scared. I couldn't move. I stood there still holding the door handles to the wardrobe, but could not move. And I couldn't hardly speak to get some attention from my wife in the background. That was a scary thing, because I genuinely it felt like somebody was stood next to me, like someone was pressed up against me. It wasn't nice.
So that first experience you mentioned reminds me of the internet meme about, oh, what's that noise in the house? Oh, don't worry, it's just a ghost. It's not an intruder. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yeah, it is. Very much so, yeah.
You had a paranormal team investigate the house, and do you feel that it helped or hindered the situation in the house?
So there's been a couple now. So we had Awakening the Paranormal came in for the first book. They came and spent probably about 6 or 7 hours here. They brought they all investigated very different, these guys. So the first team brought in lots of gadgets and gizmos that I'd never seen before in my life. which were all going off simultaneously at times, which he was saying was very strange. They don't normally get that sort of stuff. It was quite a lively night that night. Well, so much so that I went to bed with the television and the light on because there was a lot of noise in the house. It was like the house had come to life after they left the property. The second lot was a team called Ghosts on Trent, who are quite well known across YouTube. Very respected paranormal enthusiasts, investigators that basically do a serious job. They'll go around your house or normally around old castles and things like that, older buildings. But they came here, I invited them to come around and have a look, and they spent 24 hours here. They set up 6 cameras, I think it was. So there's a lot of footage to edit through. And to be honest, not a lot happened on the day. There were quite a few noises in the day when we left the house. Now, whether they are, I'm using my logical brain here, whether that was the house settling noises, could have been. Mm-hmm. But if you bear in mind, we had the cameras rolling for 24 hours and these noises didn't happen at any other point apart from when we left the house for an hour and a half. So that was a little bit strange. And there was something captured potentially in one of the windows, which caused a bit of a stir in the paranormal world. If you've not seen that yet, you can find it on YouTube, Ghosts on Trent at my Sheffield home. 51 minutes and 21 seconds in, we found something after it had been uploaded to YouTube that it's either a very good case of pareidolia or that somebody stood at the window. And it to me looks like there's a person there, but I have invited them to come back and investigate it by using the same cameras, the same lighting, and even putting some water on the window because we need to test. It was raining that day. So if it's not raining, we need to put some water on the outside of the window and really test it. That was strange. But yeah, it was quite a quiet day with Ghosts on Trent, unless that was somebody stood at the window and we actually caught a ghost on camera, which would be amazing. And the third one was a team called My Haunted Hotel. Now, they were doing a road trip for men's mental health and reached out to me and said, your story about raising money for the cancer charity is amazing. Can we come and talk to you about it and potentially do a bit of a investigation while we're at your home? They only came for a few hours that evening, but they did capture a couple of things that night. And after they left, quite a few things happened in the house overnight and the next day. So it sort of started a bit of a week of madness. It was like something came alive after they left the house. But yeah, they had a couple of bits happen while they were here as well.
I have heard that before, that a paranormal investigation can sort of stir things up a bit. And
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, it was a bit crazy what happened after they left as well, because there was a picture of myself and my wife. It's a bit unnerving, this, to be fair. There was a picture of my wife and I on our wedding day, and it's on my bedside table. It's a nice picture, about yay sort of size, and it's of our first dance. And I was the only one in the house because I had to ship my wife and my son away to a hotel for the night while the investigators came. So they'd gone to a nice hotel for the night, and there was nobody else in the house apart from me, and the house was immaculate because I had people coming in with UHD cameras to film around here, so it had to be well presented. So I knew where everything was, and I woke up that morning, made the bed, as I always do. I'm quite OCD like that, and I went downstairs, had my breakfast. Later that day, just before my wife got back, I'd walked into the bedroom, and that picture was on the centre of the bed, propped up in the centre of the bed. And I know I'd not put it there, and there's nobody else had been in the house. It was really strange, and that was sort of the start of a sequence of events that happened that week.
Almost, maybe the ghost was saying, where is she? Or something. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. But it was a strange, it unnerved my wife a little bit, that one, to be fair.
What do you feel is the best evidence that you've had over all this time for the existence of ghosts?
Do you know what? Probably some of the EVPs that we've caught have been phenomenal, especially because one of them, and if you've not heard this, I've put it on the Facebook page, and I did the right thing by putting it on and not saying it. I just said, look, I think we've captured an EVP here. Can you tell me what it says? And that's the strange thing with electronic voice phenomena. People hear different things. But with this one, a number of people heard the same thing. So I left it a couple of days, and a lot of people were messaging me saying, it says, I love you, Grace. Now, the weird thing is, there's two strange steps to this. So I've called my wife in the book Grace. All the names are changed. I've called her Grace in the book. Also, one of the former residents of the house, now that her history's been done, I didn't know this at the time, one of the former residents of the house is called Grace. And the EVP to me is very clear. It says, I love you, Grace. And about 50 seconds after that, on the same clip, you hear somebody say, be quiet.
Sheffield, what's the family secret?
What's the relevance of this corner? Come on. Can you tell me what the relevance of this corner is? Come on, don't be quiet.
Like really whispered into the camera, and there's nobody in the room. Now there are debunkers out there, as you're probably well aware, that are across YouTube that try and debunk these things. I was there that night. That was on the night when Awakening the Paranormal came to do their investigation, and the camera that picked this up was my own camera, which I'd set up in the front room, and we were, if you walk out the front room, through the kitchen, there's an extension. It's like an open plan kitchen. We were in the far side of the extension, all stood around the table on camera at the time. There were 4 people in the house, 3 of them and me. There's nobody else in the house. And that be quiet is whispered into the camera. And the I love you, Grace is coming from somewhere in the vicinity of that camera. Very, very strange. And I think as evidence, getting a name correct that you don't find out for another 2 years. I didn't find out that somebody lived here called Grace until Joanne had reached out to me, the historian. I found that fascinating.
It's a nice tie-in, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
The evidence
I found
linking
that
up, yeah.
absolutely fascinating, yeah.
So when you've had extreme experiences in the house, and so I'm thinking of the knives, which is what I think I'd probably find terrifying.
Yeah.
Do you feel that there was a catalyst for these events, or did they always seem to come out of nowhere?
I think some of the bigger events that have happened have been centered around women. So the knife incident was a lady who, a friend of mine that I've known since she was born, basically. She's like a second family to me, her family. I class her as like a cousin, but she phoned me and said, I've got a friend who's moving to Sheffield. She's looking for a place to rent. I know you've got some spare rooms. And I said, yeah, no problem. At the time, it was just me living alone. And I rented her, again, this room that I'm in. She came and moved in here on the Friday night. And on the Sunday morning, that's when the knife incident happened. So 5 knives found in the floor, in wooden floor, in oak floorboards as well. So quite a dense wood. They were 2 inches deep. They were in size order. They were all pretty evenly spaced across the foot of the doorwell from the front room to the kitchen. Yes, that really creeped me out, but the logical side of me kind of says that I don't know if that's paranormal. And I wrote this in the book. I don't know if that's paranormal or if that's some absolute loon that's got into my house on a Sunday morning because the front door wasn't locked and done that. Why anybody would do that, I have no idea. And it's not that sort of area. As I say, I've been here 21 years. But that did involve her just moving into the house. My wife, the first time my wife saw the lady, because she's seen her twice, and she really doesn't like this sort of stuff either. It creeps her out quite a bit. The first time that she saw her was one of the first nights that she came back to my house, and she was in the bay window as we were getting out the taxi. Again, I'm stood there, and she's pointing at the window saying, who's the old lady in the window? And I didn't put this in the book, but she said, is that your nan? Is it your nanan? I was like, I hope not. No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't be. There's nobody in the house. And the second time she saw her was the first night I left her alone in the house while I went out on a Christmas do with friends. She was supposed to be having a nice relaxing night with a cheese board and some red wine, and saw the lady again. So I don't know if it's something to do with women in the house and this being a lady spirit that's sort of warning them off or welcoming them. It might be welcoming them, but I don't know. I'm guessing the knives is not welcoming, but
No, it doesn't feel very welcoming. And did you notice any patterns of activity? Was there a particularly active time of day or year for ghostly activity? So my friend who used to work in a castle said for them it was Christmas, Easter and August. But I thought that could just be that there's more people on the site at that time of the year, more people to see it.
Yeah.
But what's your experience in a private home?
Not massively, no. And I have tried, because I knew I was writing the second book, I've been looking at all sorts of, trying to find rhyme or reason to dates, times, lunar cycles, you name it. I have looked at it and there's nothing that adds up. These are just sporadic dates and times throughout the year. It doesn't always...
You said 1 a.m. or something, did you say earlier?
Sorry, with the 1 a.m. with the footsteps, yes. If you asked me when we hear footsteps the most, I would say probably about 1 o'clock at night. But when it comes to the rest of the events, there's nothing that... I mean, I've just said about 7 o'clock in the morning, that week of madness, there were things that happened on 3 days consecutively at 7 o'clock in the morning. But that's never happened before. That was just that week. But yeah, these things happen quite sporadically. You can't tell when it's going to happen. One thing I could kind of put my finger on, where stuff tends to happen when we have a number of people in the house. So last weekend there were 4 different events happen last weekend, one of which was quite huge at the end we have a stag's head in the kitchen, which is about the size of a real stag's head, and they're heavy. They're screwed into where the extension is. So where the partition wall where the wall used to be to the outside, there's 2 pillars there going into the extension, and we've got stag heads on both of those pillars going up each side. And we're sat around the table on Saturday night. My wife had thrown a surprise party for me, which literally was a surprise. There were quite a few people in the kitchen. Now, at the end of the night, there were 5 of us there. And we were sat around the table, apart from my wife, who was stood at the other side of the kitchen. Nobody's anywhere near these stag heads, which are pretty central to the room that we're in. And one of them shot off the wall. I don't mean fell, I mean shot off the wall. If it had fallen straight down, there are 2 bottles of whiskey underneath it, and this is a heavy stag's head that's screwed into a wall plug in the wall. And it flew across the room and smashed the nose off those. A bit disappointed because I really like them, and it's broken the nose off one of the stag heads. But there were 5 of us in the room at the time. Everybody saw it, and we all went over to try and make sense of it, one of which being a huge skeptic who always says to me, I still don't believe in all this stuff in your house. And I was kind of stood with him saying, explain that to me. Explain how that's just happened. And if it did fall off the wall, how it's not taken the 2 bottles of whiskey that are sat underneath it on the side. It's impossible. It must have gone out before dropping down. I don't think that's how gravity works.
Had a similar thing or something going flying across the room, like you say. Maybe they were commenting on your taste in decoration. Perhaps the ghost didn't like it.
Maybe didn't like it, but it's been up there 3 years. So they picked the time to do it. Yeah, they've been up on the wall 3 years. So for it to happen just like that is just crazy.
And what do you believe ghosts are? What's your personal thoughts on it?
So I've got a strange theory on this. I don't know if I believe in ghosts and spirits. I've not seen the old lady. I have seen and this was only probably about a month back now, I've seen a full shadow figure of a person with facial features, you name it. I've seen it for the first time only about a month back. Do I believe it's ghosts, or do I believe it's some sort of... I think it's some sort of energy that we're not aware of yet. I think there are still things being discovered in the world, which there are. Every day, people are finding new species in the sea and that sort of stuff. There's things that are yet to be discovered. I think it might be something like that. I don't know if I'm I know things happen in this house. I can tell you that for definite, because I've seen them, I've heard them. But I wouldn't put my hat on it and say it's ghosts and spirits. It could just be some sort
Spirits
of
of
energy.
not spirits of dead people. You're saying just
It could,
some
yeah,
sort of
it could
energy.
just be some sort of energy, is what I would say. But if it's hard to say that when I've got people who I put a lot of faith and trust into, close friends and family that have seen the old lady. It's kind of saying, "Well, you're lying," but I'm not saying that. It could be ghosts and spirits. I'm open to it. But I genuinely think there are things we haven't discovered yet, and it could be something like that. Is my thought.
It's interesting that you said you were 19 as well, isn't it? Because that's when a lot of people have sort of poltergeist experiences in their teens. And I mean, I was 19, so
Okay.
it's interesting that a lot of people have experiences around about that age. But then yours has gone on for so long.
Yeah, it's gone on now on 21 years this December, so it's gone on a long, long time, and it's still, like I say, it's still going on. It's actually been quite a hotbed of activity over the past month. So yeah.
And in my own experience with the poltergeist, before any strong activity, I felt a sort of electric feeling in the air, so a bit like the feeling before a thunderstorm breaks. And have you ever experienced anything like that yourself?
I have, yeah, plenty of times.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yes, and it's normally just before something happens or just after something happens. You get the feeling. It's very hard to describe what it is, but I think you've just put it quite well, like the feeling a storm's going to happen. It's a strange, quite oppressive feeling, is how I've described it before. And you could be walking. I mean, to put it in context, when I had somebody around to do a podcast here not too long back, and they were quite scared. They'd read the first book, and they were quite scared about walking around the house. They're full-on believers in everything, and they were quite scared of going around the house. And I said, I'll take you for a tour around the house. And I actually said to them before we walked round, it doesn't feel active today. And they were like, what do you mean by that? And I said, it sounds weird, this, but you can sometimes feel when something's going to happen. Anyway, I took them for a walk around the house. Nothing happened. And I said, there you go. Nothing to be scared of. And we went downstairs and started doing the podcast and having a chat. And then they asked me for a video that I had on my laptop, on this laptop that I'm on now, which is kept in this office. And I came upstairs to get the laptop, and when I walked in the room, that feeling hit me. And it was like somebody was stood in the room with me, and I froze for a second. It's making the hairs stand up on my arms now talking about it. I froze for a second, and I sort of looked up as if to say, I know there's somebody here, and I don't want to know about it right now. I'm going back downstairs. And I went back into the kitchen and looked at the guys, and just as I was about to speak, one of my little boy's toys went off in the front room. And I was just about to say, something's going to happen in a minute, because I've just felt that something's going to happen. And it's never gone off. This toy's never gone off before. It's never gone off since on its own. But a mechanical toy, which can have glitches, I get that. Me using my skeptical mind again. But it happened just as I was about to say, something's just about to happen. And then I sent them upstairs to have a walk round and said, just go and check how you feel about things upstairs. And I know this can be like cross-pollination or whatever you want to call it. But they went upstairs to have a look round and said, yeah, it feels really oppressive up there now. It feels scary. It feels like not a nice place to be.
I mean, that leads quite nicely into my next question, actually, because I see so many parallels between your experiences and mine, although mine was over a much shorter period of time. I can't even remember how long now, maybe 1.5, 2 years.
Okay.
But you mentioned in the second book about, I think it was your brother, was it experiencing a fire alarm setting off by itself?
Yes.
For no reason, when nobody was cooking or anything.
Yep.
I also experienced that, so like another similar
Okay.
thing. But my experience was back in the early 1990s. And at that time, of course, didn't have many gadgets, didn't have any sort of phone, not even a landline. My TV was like a push button thing, not even a remote control. There was no kitchen gadgets. So your experience being much more recent, you've had lots of experiences with technology, haven't you? And can you tell us something about what you've experienced, especially the arm I found fascinating?
With the what, sorry?
The arm in the cot.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. So we've had quite a few bits. I think if you've read both the books, you'll realize the second book, technology's actually come on so much since that
Mm,
first book, because there's things like baby monitors, like what we've got, and there's the Ring doorbells and CCTV, things that I
mm,
didn't have when the first book was written. But the baby monitor, yeah, that was a creepy one. So it was the first night. My son's called Xander, and it was the first night we finally, my wife had said, let's let him go into his own room. I'd been sort of pestering for a long time, saying, come on, it's time we put him in his nursery. He's got a really nice kitted out nursery ready for him. But she didn't want to let go. She wanted him to still stay in the cot next to the bed. But eventually one night he fell asleep, and I said, right, I'm going to try him in his nursery. And I took him up there and I laid him down very gently. I said, I love you, son. And I left him there with the baby monitor on. Now, that night, neither of us got much sleep because it's my son's first night in his crib on his own in the next room. So I was up pretty much all night. To every single time the monitor went off, it goes to an app on your phone and it sort of pings at you. And I was looking at it and checking he was okay and making sure things were fine. And you saw the odd flailing arm or leg in there. But then in the morning, I must have fallen asleep, and in the morning at 8 o'clock, he started crying, and it's pretty much every morning 8 o'clock he starts to cry because he's hungry. And when he did that, my wife jumped up first and ran around the bed and said, "I'll go and see to him." She couldn't wait to go and see him. She's been without him for the first night. So she went to grab him, and while she did, I got the app on my phone and I started looking through the past couple of hours of footage where it just takes a 10, 15-second time frame of that motion detected or sound detected. And at 6:50 that morning, you see, I think it's the door open as opposed to a light come on. I think the door opens into the bedroom because you see a light on that side of the screen. And then you see a very faint figure walk round the side of the crib. And this room is a tiny room. It's a little tiny box room, just big enough for the nursery. But you see this figure sort of get round the other side of the crib, and then the arm seems to go through the bars. It doesn't go over the bars and into the crib. It goes through the bars and picks something up, which I think's a dummy. I've looked back at the footage many times and zoomed in. I think it's a pacifier or a dummy.
right.
And then the arm goes back through the bars. Now, the strangest thing about it is at the end of the video, whatever's there doesn't leave the room, it just dissipates in the corner. Now, if you've seen that room, it's very small. There's one door in, one door out. It's just one door. And it just seems to dissipate in the corner and disappear. Now, I very quickly shouted my wife back into the room and said, "You didn't get up at 6:50 this morning, did you?" And she came and looked at the video and said, "That's not me." And it definitely wasn't me. I cannot explain it. And we've tried to recreate it. I've posted these videos on Facebook for people to view and give me some theories on what they think's happened. The arm's not mine or my wife's, and there's only us two in the house with the little one. So unless somebody snuck into the house in the middle of at 6 o'clock in the morning and done that, then there's something
Yeah.
very paranormal about it. Yeah, it was creepy. It does creep me out a little bit, that one.
Highly unlikely, isn't it? But yeah, it's affected lots of your electrical stuff, hasn't it? I saw something this week, and you never know if it's real on the internet, but it was a woman in a microwave just keeps going off on its own, just starts, which could be quite dangerous, really.
Very
But
dangerous, yeah. Yeah.
no, it's fascinating how, I mean, that sort of fits with your energy idea, doesn't it, really? That sort of energy affecting
Yeah, it genuinely
different things
could be.
like that.
We've had the shower turn itself on in the middle of the night, which again is very, very strange. And this is it's not an electric shower, by the way. It's the old-fashioned handle turning
Oh,
job.
handle, okay.
And that was on full blast until I walked into the room. But it was still, when you wake up in the middle of the night and hear the shower on, you think, why is that happening? And you walk in there thinking you might be dreaming or something. But when you look at it and you can still see the water going down the plug hole and the steam coming up because it's been on hot, you know this is not a dream. This is actually happening. I'm sort of scratching my head thinking, if something can do that, that's dangerous. Because if something's got the power to turn the handles on these, they're quite tough handles on the shower. Yeah, very strange.
And you mentioned in the second book that you experienced sleep paralysis, and for anyone that's never experienced it, that's a sort of a state halfway between asleep and awake.
Yeah.
And you wake up, but your body and your vocal cords are paralyzed. I think it's something that happens naturally
Yeah.
as we sleep, so we don't hurt ourselves.
Yeah.
But you can also experience hallucinations. So there's a sense of
You can.
presence of threat. And sometimes a dark figure, which I really hated,
Yep.
would actually crawl onto your chest, and you feel this crushing sensation.
Yeah.
So I experienced it for like 25 years, I think, which, you know,
Wow.
touch wood, hasn't happened for, I think, at least 5 years.
For you, because that's yeah, it's not
And
nice.
I was happy to accept the scientific explanations for that one, I have to admit. But someone very recently raised a point that often that sort of experience starts in a haunted location. And then I realised it had started in that first house, the first time I had an experience.
And that's the same for me as well. It started when I moved in here.
Well, I was going to say, yeah. So what, soon after you moved in?
It was not too far after I moved in. And you know, the scientific side of it, you would say it's probably burning the candle at both ends. I worked a very busy job. I was working 60, 70 hours a week, and I was trying to go out with the lads at a weekend and trying to keep up with them as well. So you'd be very overtired, probably quite stressed, and that can lead to sleep paralysis. Now, but obviously the latest thing that I've written about in the second book was sleep paralysis, but I know how to deal with it now. And I think I've written this in the book. I've learned how to deal with it when I've got it. I know it's happening, and I just have to control my breathing. So as soon as I go into this sleep paralysis thing, and you'll know this, you can't do anything. You can't speak. You can literally just hear your own breathing, and you can't move. And it's quite a horrible state to be in. And you can have hallucinations, like you mentioned, and feel like somebody's there. Well, I had that while I was laid on the sofa trying to get myself out of sleep paralysis by controlling my breathing. But then I felt something prod me in the back hard, really in the shoulder blade, like somebody like really dig into my shoulder blade. And it woke me from the sleep paralysis. So you'll know if somebody touches you while in sleep paralysis or anything, it wakes you up.
Yeah.
It woke me from the paralysis, but I could feel my shoulder blade hurting. So I looked around, there's nobody there, but I'd heard the footsteps coming towards me, running towards me, then the prod, and then the pain in my shoulder. So how does that happen? And genuinely, I had a mark on my shoulder the size of a £1 coin that was a bruise.
You just made me think, actually, because, like you say, somebody prodding you or something wakes you up. Perhaps they were trying to be helpful.
Well, I've actually put that in the book. It could be a presence trying to rouse me from sleep paralysis, or it could be something far more sinister taking advantage of me while I'm in sleep paralysis. You don't know, do you?
No. And my husband says I sound like a demented goat because I'm always trying to say his name, but because my vocal cords are paralysed, it comes out. You know that scene in Willow where she's going, Willow!
Yeah.
So you end up talking like that. But you also mentioned, as you said earlier, about the coins appearing in your home, and it even spread outside your home. And that made me think of this guy called Darren Ritson. His book mentioned the possibility of something called paranormal contagion in regards to poltergeists. Have you read his book? What do you think of that idea?
I haven't read his book. Just remind me exactly what that entails, Karen.
I think it was roughly the idea that, you know, if you go to somebody's home that's had some sort of poltergeist activity, which you know, a lot of your stuff is, that person, when they go away, can sort of take it with them, and then the poltergeist activity can move to their home. So you mentioned the coins happening in your friend's house.
It's been it's been a few people's houses now. So since the trouser pocket incident with my friend Doug, why I wrote the book in the first place, that was him finding a American coin in his trouser pocket. He brought that back pretty sharpish to my house because he genuinely thought he's had experiences here. He's seen the old lady, and he didn't want something to have followed him back to his house. The other chap is Ian. Ian is the guy who was also sat in the room with me and said, you should write these stories. He was the one who talked me into doing it in the first place. So both those two people both found coins. So Ian had been at my house all evening. He had his wife and his son round. We had a late tea or dinner, you call it. And we probably stayed up later than we should have for new parents. We were up till about 11:30, which was late for us. And they left to go home. And at 12 o'clock that night, I had a message from his partner called Georgia saying, "You're not, well, is this your coin?" Basically, I think she had a palm out on the photo, sent me a WhatsApp, and there was a 1 cent coin. "Is this your 1 cent coin? I hope your spirits haven't followed us home." Ian had got up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet at 12 o'clock. And as he walked out onto the landing, there was a 1 cent coin right in the middle of the carpet in front of his door to his bedroom. Neither of which had been to America and were quite creeped out by it. And again, they brought that coin back to my house pretty quick because they didn't want somebody following them home. And I get that. Yeah, I get that.
Oh, I have to send you a link to his book. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I'm interested in stuff like that. Yeah, definitely.
So, profits from the first book sales go towards Cavendish Cancer Care. And the last I saw on your media, I think this week, was it made £50,000 so far. Amazing.
It's just gone over, literally this morning, it's gone over £50,000. So I'm really so pleased.
So very generously, you've sort of donated that all to the charity. Can you tell us why you chose to do that?
Yeah, of course I can. As I mentioned before, my mum had a very rare form of breast cancer. And throughout her diagnosis and treatment, Cavendish Cancer Care really looked after my mum. And since then, they've looked after my family, dealing with grief and that side of things. But before my mum passed, I said to her, "Look, I've written this book. I don't know how much. I mean, I told Cavendish Cancer Care I thought it'd raise about £2,500. It did that in the first day it went on sale. But I sat with my mum and said, look, I'd like you to choose which charity all the money goes to. I don't want a penny from it. I want it all to go to somebody who's looked after you." And she chose Cavendish Cancer Care. Cavendish have actually just merged with a larger charity called Western Park, the Western Park Cancer Charity, who a lot of people from Sheffield will be aware that they're a very big charity around here. And yeah, I'm so proud to be a part of it. And the £50,000 goes a long way. It helps a lot of people who are going through similar sort of things, dealing with grief or dealing with the diagnosis and the treatments that they're going through for cancer, which is great. It's a very proud moment every day to see the money going to the charity for that.
Can we chat about your experience with the HMRC and the money raised from the first book, as I think to help other authors?
Yeah, of course, please. Yeah, do, because I don't want anybody else to get caught with that. So basically, when I wrote the first book, as I mentioned, I only thought it'd raise about £2,500 for the charity to look after other people. It went on to do, I think it was about 30,000 in the first year. It was just over 30,000. And I had a letter come through the post from the HMRC. I'll not mention exactly what number was on it, but it was over 5 digits, big digits. And I kind of panicked and thought, well, why have I got a bill to pay tax for this amount? Because I've been employed. I've been very lucky to be employed all my life from being 15 years old. And obviously all the money from this, it goes directly from Amazon to the cancer charity. So it doesn't touch my bank account. It goes directly from them to the cancer charity. And that's how I'd set it up, thinking that because I'm doing it that way, I've signed the book over to the cancer charity as well. So it's not like it's under my, yes, it's got a pseudonym on the front. It's got William Seagrave. My name's Liam. It's not, not William Seagrave. But the money doesn't touch my bank. I thought I'd be fine. And I wasn't. I got a letter through saying that you owe X amount of money. I had to get an accountant involved, get a solicitor involved. I actually got the local MP involved because I couldn't get any. The HMRC was saying, you owe X amount, you've got to pay it. And I said, but I haven't had the money. The charity's had the money. So how can I pay tax on money that I've not had? And they said, it's because you've written a book, and that is intellectual property in essence. You own the rights to it. So whether you've had the money or not, it's up to you that you've given the money away. You owe the tax on it.
That's incredible.
So yeah, I eventually got the bill down to £2,500, which was a lot easier to swallow. I mean, I shouldn't have had to swallow anything. I think it's disgraceful, if I'm being honest, that they
Yeah.
couldn't solve it. They can clearly see that I've not had the money, because it doesn't even go to my bank. It goes directly to a charity from Amazon. So I thought it was an absolute disgrace, and so did a lot of the followers of the book as well. But it's one of those, isn't it? There's nothing I could do about it. It was either that or face the consequences of not paying tax, which I don't fancy jail time or a bigger fine. So I ended up having to pay the fee. But if you don't want that to happen to you, there are ways and means that you can do it. So what I've done now, I've set up a limited company. So the money goes, instead of it going directly to the charity, the money goes into the limited company. And I've signed over all the rights to that book officially, so through a solicitor, to the charity.
Right.
So now the money hits the limited company, and it's set up every year that money is then dumped out at the end of the year just to go to the charity. So there are ways and means that you can do it.
Yeah. So you won't get fined again.
I
It won't get taxed again. Rather.
I won't get fined
Oh.
on it. I won't get taxed on it. It'll literally be going out of the limited company to the charity at the end of the year. And it'll be nice to do it at Christmas time as well, because it'll really help them. So, yeah, there are ways and means to sort it. I don't want anybody else getting stung like that, because it wasn't very nice,
No.
as you can imagine.
Well, my grandfather's World War One diaries I had, and I was going to publish it. I thought, money, I'll give that to, I don't know, Help for Heroes or something. But I had no idea anything like that was possible. So thanks for sharing that. That's really
No
useful
problem.
to know.
No, that's okay. That's all right.
Do readers of your book ever share their own paranormal experiences with you?
Yeah, I love it as well. To be fair, so there's quite a tight knit following. I didn't realize how passionate the paranormal world was. So everybody who's anybody has been in touch with me, and it's been great. And people do share their stories, and it's quite nice to hear that other people, like you've been telling me about, your stories are quite similar to mine.
Yeah.
It's quite nice to hear that, because it makes you think, I'm not a nutter then, because it happens to other people as well. So yeah, it's quite nice to hear the stories, and some of them are phenomenal what you hear as well. But it's so much so that I'm following your roots. I'm starting a podcast in January, where I'll be interviewing. I'm going to start off by interviewing some of the people that have had paranormal things happen in my home. But then I'm going to go further afield, and I've got a list of people already set up to talk to who've had some pretty horrendous things, some of them, but some of them just fascinate me, how the stuff's happened. And these are genuine people. These are genuine, everyday people like me and you that things have happened to, and I just find it fascinating.
And because there's still quite a stigma attached to speaking about paranormal experiences. It's become more mainstream lately with people like Danny Robbins and yourself bringing it to the fore. Yeah. But I still see people, and they speak to you in frightened whispers, because they don't want other people to know, just in case they think they're mad or something. Do you think that science will ever prove what ghosts are, or will ghosts become the normal rather than the paranormal?
It's too hard to sort of say on that front. I don't know the answer to it. I would love to get some answers to the various questions that I have about what's going on here. I would absolutely love that. Of course I would. And I think anybody would want to know, are the spirits about? Are the ghosts about? Are the loved ones still here? That sort of stuff. But I suppose we'll have to wait and see if that ever happens. But you're right. And people are quite scared to come forward and talk. It's quite nice that people do send me private messages on Facebook and things that say, can I just tell you about this that happened with me? And they ask me questions to say, what do you think? I'm like, I'm no expert. I just write about my experiences and tell you how I feel about them. But I'm intrigued to hear what you're saying. And obviously I'm not going to ridicule you for it, because I've been there and got the T-shirt for it. So yeah.
You're a safe space for them, aren't you?
Yeah, basically.
Release.
Yeah. And if they do want to talk about it on the podcast, I'm more than happy to talk to them about it. But I nearly didn't release the book for the same fear. I work in quite a professional job, and I was worried about releasing the book and what would be said about me. So it took a big step for me to do that in the first place. And one of the biggest stories in the book was about my brother and him being scared. And he didn't want me to put that in the book at all. Even if I was changing his name, he was saying, no, please don't do that. I don't want people hearing that I've seen a ghost, because he's one of the ones that's seen the lady. But eventually he agreed, because it was for the cancer charity. Eventually he agreed that I could do it, because it's one of the bigger hitting stories, to be fair, in the book, especially because he's like the opposite. I'm a lover, not a fighter. He's like the opposite of me, and he's a big brute of a guy. So for him to be petrified by seeing a ghost was a big thing.
My experience still obviously affects me now. I'm doing a podcast about the paranormal here.
Yeah, of course.
How has the experience profoundly affected you and perhaps your views on the world, or even life after death? Do you think it's changed it at all?
Yes, yeah, of course it has. Because since nothing before I moved into this house at 19 years old, nothing paranormal had ever happened to me before that. And over the last 21 years, things have happened. Now, the weird thing is, for me, I'm so intrigued by it, even if it is something that scares me, like that cough, like the voice on the stairs, I run towards it as opposed to away from it, because I want to know the answer. So I'll not run away screaming about it. Yes, it might scare me, but then I'll go, ooh, but what was it? Let me go and have a look. So yeah, it's massively changed how I feel about stuff like that. And life after death, I don't know. Again, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if it is ghosts and spirits and things. I'd love to think it was. It'd be lovely to think that your loved ones are still around you. But I don't know.
So The Lady in the Bay Window has been turned into a play by Coalface Productions.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Of course I can. It's been a phenomenal roller coaster the past 2 years, with TV and film companies and all that sort of stuff getting in contact. But the theatre play, with 2 local playwrights from Barnsley, the lovely blokes, Liam and Paul, and we've got a full theatrical cast. So they contacted me, they loved the first book, and they wanted to write a play about it. So I said, okay, happy to help where you need. Let's have a look at a script. Everything's been put together. The rehearsals are well underway. We've booked 3 theatres, the Sheffield Drama Studio in January. We've got Barnsley Lamp Room in February next year. And we've got Penistone Paramount in March next year. The Sheffield Drama Studio sold out in 3 days. They've never sold out a play as fast, and asked us to do more nights because it sold out so fast. Then the Barnsley Lamp Room is now sold out as well. That's 240 seats per night, 2 nights. And then Penistone Paramount on the first night has sold about 85%, I think, so far. The second night, which is Mother's Day, March the 15th next year, hasn't sold a lot of tickets, but I think it's because there was an issue on the website. It's only sold about 30 tickets, but they are selling fast now because it's been fixed. So they're selling pretty quick. But if the play is half as good as the rehearsals I've been watching, it's going to be amazing. I'm really looking for it. I've been to see Danny Robbins' 222. I've been to see Danny Robbins' theatre shows as well, where he does the stand-up on the stage. And I've got tickets to go and see his next one. I really enjoyed them. This is going to be up there. I cannot wait to see it. And it's very strange for me watching my life come to life on stage.
Yeah, I bet.
Very, very, very surreal. But it's great. I'm loving it, to be fair. And the cast are fantastic. They're a really close-knit team. There's 11 actors in there that are brilliant.
And where's the best place for people to buy a copy of your book? Is it direct from you or Amazon or?
Either way, you can go to Amazon and search for The Lady in the Bay Window or The Lady in the Bay Window 2. It's actually made it into the top 100 books in the UK on its launch day, which I'm really
brilliant.
proud of. And it's number 1 across all its categories and things now. It's knocked my first book off number 1. That was number 1. The new book is number 1, and that's number 2 now, which is confusing. But they can go to theladyinthebaywindow.com, where you can look at the theatre tickets, you can buy signed copies of the books, and there's all the links to the first and second book on Amazon on there as well, or just go direct to Amazon or eBay. But if you go into eBay, look for the official ones from me, because there's a lot of people that sell your books on there, and I don't think it's right when they're selling a book that's raising money for charity and profiting from it.
Right. And where's the best places on social media for people to find you?
So I'm on Facebook, The Lady in the Bay Window, William C. Grave. You'll find me on there. Instagram under the same handle as well, William C. Grave, The Lady in the Bay Window. And I'm down with the kids now. I've got a TikTok account. So you can find me on TikTok under the same name as well. But everything I share is the same across all 3 platforms. It just depends which one you want to use yourself. Again, you can find the links to all of those on theladyinthebaywindow.com.
Okay. Lovely. Oh, it's been fascinating talking to you.
Thank you for having me,
really
Sharon.
interesting. Thank you for coming on. And thanks very much. And say goodbye to everybody and see you next time.
Thank you ever so much, guys. Thank you.
There are stories galore in volumes by the score on every subject throughout history. It's all waiting in